Commissioner Maroš Šefčovič, thank you for joining us on Euronews. Of course, you have the portfolio in this commission, trade, and you just came back from a trip to the United States where you met with the U.S. delegation. You've announced there's now a deal when it comes to critical minerals with the Trump administration. But I have to ask you, and I know you will disagree, but the concern, the criticism in the past year is that the deals the EU makes with the U.S. are tilted in the favor of the Trump administration. Is that fair? And if not, what is Europe going to take out of this?
I think that the best proof that the deal we made is a fair one is actually the fact that it didn't affect our trade in negative terms, that our exports actually been growing, and I think that it provided first stability, more predictability for our exporters, and it created that platform which actually allows to have such a high level visits and meetings as I had in Washington and really go directly after the problem when they appear.
And the problems that have appeared, you say this is a deal that works for both, but there are still pending issues, and you've said you're trying to tackle them forcefully, and that is when you look at steel and aluminum, steel tariffs of 50%, that is prohibitive for European companies. The story has been dragging on for months now. Did you make any progress?
Of course, I mean, we studied carefully, I would say, this change of the measures in the sectors, and indeed you're right also from our assessment this is a mixed bag. There is a big part of the products which are so-called delisted. I also have to say that a big part of administrative burden was removed, but still there is quite a lot of products which are now tariffed more than before, and this is a big issue for our exporters, and I know that I got very clear negative reactions from the European Parliament. So that's something what we raised with my colleagues. We also presented our analysis, and we immediately instructed our teams to deal with it more concretely. And of course, this would be one of the topics which I hope to take up again with Ambassador Greer when we see each other at the next G7 meeting.
But just specifically in the steel and aluminum, because again, the producers are saying this story has been dragging on now for months. 50%, and you know this very well, it's almost prohibitive for anyone in this industry. And they say they're not seeing steps for resolution. Are you seeing steps for resolutions? Or frankly, let's be honest, nothing is practically moving?
As I said, something has moved because, I mean...
what makes you believe that?
I think, I mean, if you look at the latest changes, I would say, to how they treat the derivatives, so indeed, a big part of the products was delisted. So, I mean, they are out of this very high tariffed category. Then, as I said, administrative burden, which was really excessive, was significantly reduced, but we still have a problem. That's very clear. And therefore, I put on the table again the idea which we kind of arrived at together last year to create this steel ring, which I believe is the best solution for both of us, because we do not have the problem with our mutual steel trade. We have problem with the excessive capacity, which is hitting the global market.
Of China?
I think it's not China only. I mean, it comes from other sources as well, but I just give you the number. Next year we accept 720 million tons of excessive capacity of steel, and European consumption is 140 million. So it's like, what is it, 5 times, 6 times more than we consume in Europe?
So we're getting penalized both ways.
Exactly. I mean, they have a problem with excessive capacities. We have the problem with excessive capacities. So I do not understand why we should hit each other.
And as we get penalized both ways, you just delivered the numbers on top of the tariff that they have put on the Europeans. What is their way forward, however? And I wonder, is this not really making progress at speed because it is connected to digital services? They have indicated they do see a relation.
I think that how to make progress in this case, I was explaining in great detail our, let's say, newly adopted steel safeguard. The fact that we are reducing imports to the EU by 47%, and we have so-called out-of-quota tariffs also on 50%. So our defensive measures, if it comes to the steel sectors, are very similar. So it creates a precondition for having, I would say, this steel ring approach, and I hope that we will make some headway in that regard.
And the U.S., just to close on this chapter, however, they do make a form of amalgamation between the trade and the digital services and the taxes and also penalties on U.S. digital companies operating in Europe. Did you make it clear that there is no connection? Did they once again push you to say they want to see a watered-down legislation on digital services? How did this conversation go? Because they do make a link.
I think that from our perspective, it's very clear that if it comes to digital sovereignty, it's for us to decide. And
so you will not give anything?
We cannot give anything what concerns our legislation, but we are ready to talk, to explain, and I think what we both need is a digital dialogue. So I'm also discussing with my colleagues who have direct responsibility for this matter, be it Executive Vice President Rivera or Executive Vice President Virkkunen, because in many aspects, again, we have very common task. What do we want and what do we don't want that would appear on the screens for our children? What kind of content we are absolutely sure that it shouldn't appear in any computer, and how we want to make sure that we would have a fair competition among the operators on the digital market. So there is a lot of things to discuss, and I think that in the past we had a quite good experience with Trade and Technological Council, and I believe that we would need some kind of alternative when we can have these high-level political discussions on all sectors.
So that's a very interesting point, because the Tech and Trade Council was precisely designed to talk about those topics. Are you suggesting that the format perhaps is no longer fit for the Trump administration? Maybe a new format could be needed?
That's my, I would say, personal view, which because when we've been brainstorming how to, push our relationship forward, I mean, for us, the joint statement is a platform. Therefore, I believe that both of us, we have to deliver on our commitments. And based on this platform, I think we need to have a body where we can have, I would say, this discussion as between the biggest trading partners and closest allies, because in many of the areas we have very similar concerns and similar worries, and I think this is what we would need. I know that what I heard from the US side was they just want to avoid to have some kind of formal structure which they would describe as a talking shop. They would like to have a structure which would really lead to the discussion on different levels and could bring really, I would say, results which would be good for both of us.
So the U.S. is saying that Tech and Trade, they rather prefer direct bilateral talks, not in a very structured format.
I don't think that we are in that level of discussion yet. We were just looking how this could be shaped, but we see that our trade and cooperation is so diverse that clearly you need the regular discussion on the irritants which are coming from the both sides, on the challenges we are ahead of side, and also where we can chart the cooperation for the for the next period.
And now I want to talk about China, because this week the Chinese Trade Ministry came out with a statement, guns blazing almost, saying that some of the proposals that the EU and the Commission have put forward, certainly when it comes to the European industry and made in Europe, are targeting China, and they are discriminating Chinese companies. If they do not get addressed their concerns, they threaten now countermeasures. Are we heading into a trade war with the Chinese?
We are not interested in any trade wars, and I made it clear from the day one, and I engaged from the day one with our Chinese counterparts. I was in Beijing. We had a meeting with Vice Prime Minister He Lifeng, and I'm in regular contact with my counterpart Wang Wentao, and I was passing very consistently the same message. We cannot have a trade deficit 1 billion euros a day. We cannot have deficit 360 billion a year. It's simply unsustainable.
Which is not improving.
It's not
getting
improving,
worse.
It's getting worse. I have, of course, very strong economic and political reaction stemming from that. We just have to also completely reform also how our customs union is operating, because between 2020 and 2026, we went from 1 to 6 billion parcels coming from China, with all the results when you really control the content of the parcels which are publicly available. So what I want is to have a constructive engagement with my Chinese counterparts. How are you going to deal with this challenge? Because I believe they also understand that this is not sustainable. I think there are very strong industrial policies in China. You have the same in US, in Canada, in Japan, in Korea. So nobody, should be surprised that the European Union, especially if it comes to the public money and public funds, want also to be promoting.
But I wonder, when the Chinese say the EU should not underestimate China's resolve to protect the legitimate interests of Chinese companies, and it could put forward measures to counteract those same proposals, is that a threat?
I think clearly what is very important here is to avoid threats and to have constructive engagement. And that
Do you like that tone when they put out a statement like that? Is that acceptable to you? to immediately go into countermeasures?
I think that we as a let's say trade ministers and trade commissioners, we have a huge responsibility in front of our economic operators. Therefore, I think what we need is indeed strategic patience, lots of courage to deal with the difficult issues, because the war is easy to declare, but it's very difficult to stop. And therefore, I think what we need is to have regular structured talk also with China. Therefore, I invited also Chinese foreign minister to visit Brussels, because I think that we need really to have very thorough assessment. What is the current situation and what is the plans for the future? Because I think that also from their perspective, it's clear that we cannot have this space of growing trade deficit with China, because that would be simply politically and economically not feasible.
But they don't seem to want to address it, at least not at speed. But I wonder, there is a pattern now in which every time the European Union tries to put forward measures to become stronger, to revive its industrial base, to become more sovereign in a very tough global environment, immediately there's a pattern of threats, potential retaliation coming from China. Can you work like this?
I think I would definitely prefer, to solve our problems before we are resorting to these measures. And I would just also invite, as I did, also our Chinese counterparts to compare our policies to the policies how they treat European businesses and how they treat the European companies in China. And that's very consistent message which we from the EU are passing over for the years. So I think that now we are entering, I would say, the level where we really need to adopt the concrete measures, because today we are in such a fast pacing world that in 1 year you can lose the whole industry. And therefore, I think that there is a resolve from the European member states to do much more to protect the jobs, to protect the businesses, to protect the economic performance in the European Union. It's just pretty natural, and you see it in all other countries in the world.
And China clearly is turbocharging its companies through a very aggressive state subsidy policy. That is a reality. Have you considered, maybe even prepared, to say if this continues, we're going to have to wait measures such as the anti-coercion tool?
I think that we never kind of threaten our partners. We definitely don't do it in the media. We are really discussing the issues on the topic by topic basis, and I believe there is a host of other things how we can deal with this issue. Of course, it
but would you say, the way that you said it with regards to the U.S. at the start of the year, that this was something the EU would not hesitate if its interests are threatened fundamentally to use? Would you apply that kind of criteria on China too?
I think that, of course, that's very clear. I mean, and we've been, I would say, crystal clear about that we would fight the tooth and nail for every European job, for every European company, for every European sector, if we see that they are treated unfairly. That's our job, and therefore we have the international rules. Therefore, we have very clear provisions how the subsidies should be offered, and therefore our key topics for the reform of WTO was to restore level playing field and to reflect how the situation in geoeconomics has shifted from 1995 until 2026. What has changed? What is the political and economic weight of several countries? And this has to be factored in, because we cannot stay the last large super open economy where some countries are taking advantage of.
You've been all around the world cutting trade deals, and the clear mandate for you now is to reach out to the world and make more deals. So, well, obviously, I'm a journalist. I would love to know who comes next. But tell us about the pipeline.
Yeah, I think that if you look at, I would say, the overall strategy is actually, I can put it in a few words. We want to stabilize our relationship with the US, rebalance our trade with China, and open new market access for our companies throughout the world. So we concluded the agreement with India, with Mercosur, with Indonesia, with Australia, and I hope that all of these deals would enter into force this year. Tomorrow, we are starting provisionally.
On India, is there any progress, any update? The Indians seem to be very keen on getting this done.
We want all the deals which we agreed upon to make sure that we would complete our ratification process this year. Of course, it's a big discussion in
and that
Europe.
means before the summer?
No, I think that we would need until the end of the year, because of our linguistic versions, legal scrubbing and all. I would say the procedural steps. The most important thing is that deals are done. We just need to make sure that we are not losing any more opportunities because of our legal procedures to get them officially approved and ratified. You've been asking what's next. We are progressing very well with Philippines. So I hope that this can be done also this year, and the next year we have high hopes for making significant progress with Thailand and Malaysia. So that would cover, I would say, almost all region of ASEAN, and of course, especially after the last week when the GCC countries been invited to the European Council, I want to use this new political momentum and dynamic to advance with the UAE, and we are also looking with the GCC if we can relaunch the trade talks with the whole region, which been on the table for more than 30 years.
So the Philippines, you're hoping that this gets done
this year?
This
we
year?
Hope, yeah. I think that there are all ingredients on the table that we can conclude the negotiation with Philippines this year. That's the goal. It's very difficult to give you the more precise timetable because it also depends on political events and political availability of all actors who are involved in these negotiations. But that's the ideal plan.
When it comes to the GCC, it's clear, and they have been very open about this, that they see momentum and they want to make this deal too. However, do you see this as a deal as GCC in full, or are you now looking at bilateral deals among GCC countries because it's going to be easier?
I think that not only us, but also, for example, UAE, and I have to say some other countries from the regions kind of felt that
like who else?
I think what we heard, that also Oman and others, that if there will be no kind of chance to kind of revive and bring some, I would say, momentum on the region-to-region negotiations, that they would be ready to go on bilateral basis. But the biggest progress so far we have made with the UAE. I mean, we had several rounds of negotiations. Now we go through the most difficult chapters. But we've been very clear from the beginning that we do not see it as a separate deal. We see it as one of the building blocks of the whole region-to-region progress. And we see, especially also these days, that our economy is actually very complementary. So I think it would be a good deal for both of us. But we have to kind of make the progress on some of the issues which are difficult, and they are the reason why the negotiation takes such a long time.
And just lastly, your colleague Sabine Weyand, you put out a statement, well, a tweet in this age, where you said it had been fantastic to work with her, and you really paid tribute to the work that she did with you and for DG Trade, and in all of these very complex deals, which are fundamentally very difficult to get done. But of course, this is Brussels, and people like to talk. And one of the theories going around is that she may have paid a price for being critical about the US-EU deal, which of course she said was not quite a negotiation. Is there any truth to that?
I think that you describe Brussels very nice, that the people here like to talk. You know, we go with Sabine Weyand a long way because we've been dealing together. She was very instrumental in, I would say, getting Brexit done. So I was, and I'm still responsible for this relationship. So I know how much she did in that regard. And look at the results. I mean, we wouldn't achieve such impressive results over the last year and a half if it wouldn't be, I mean, working extremely well together with the Director General. So he's a brilliant tactician, excellent technician. She has a huge expertise. And of course, I mean, we are there to make the best possible choices. So you discuss, you ponder, you look for different options. But once we agreed upon something, we've been really working together. And she was very instrumental in all these deals, including in working on the deal with the US, and then of course on all the implementation, which was not easy feat. So I just really would like to thank her, and I think the institutions did it because she really provided exemplary and excellent service to the European Union and to the European services and to the Commission.
And there is life after the Commission. Sometimes it seems in Brussels there isn't, but there is a world out there. So, Commissioner.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much.
My wife reminds me of that very often,
Well,
I can tell you that.
Keep it in mind. Commissioner, thank you very much.
Thank
Highly
you very
appreciate
much.
it.
Thank you for having me.